Okay, I have watched Donald Trump's inauguration speech several times. I've read the transcript provided by the White House. Thank you very much. And I have to say that of all the inauguration speeches I've heard in my lifetime, this one was the most empty. Empty because it was empty of any true good feeling about the United States. It didn't have that grand, sweeping vision that anyone who would listen to it would be convinced to follow along with Donald Trump and understand what his true vision is. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm America first, but to not provide a true roadmap how to get to where he says we should be makes the entire speech worthless. Yes, I agree, America first, but guess what, folks? We've had America first for quite some time. Encapsulated within Donald Trump's speech is this idea that something is wrong with America. It's this kind of one sided, Fox News created, black white point of view of America that conjures up images of the Grim Reaper just right over your shoulder. And it seems like Donald Trump himself is actually the Grim Reaper. He has a view of cities that's absolutely horrible. He refers to specifically Detroit as urban sprawl. But then in the speech, he turns around and says, with respect to Nebraska, that it has windswept plains, as if to imagine, conjure up this image of cornfields and the wind sweeping over this broad plain, with the sun in the background and all that. But then there's something wrong with the cities. He talks about America as if it's bad, 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 and he mentions none of the good. Donald Trump did not mention that President Obama left him with an extremely healthy economy. By contrast, when President Obama became the 44th president of the United States, he inherited an economy in the wreck because of George W. Bush's policies and his failure to address the crash of 2008, as well as the failure of Republican establishment to deal with the underpinnings of our financial system that caused the crash. So President Obama had to come in and present a broad, grand, sweeping vision of a better America, and he did that. And he followed up on it with the establishment of the economic recovery program. He rebuilt the automobile industry, created 16 million jobs, and with all that, left Donald Trump with an economy that's grown at over 3% in the last quarter, an average unemployment rate of 4.7%. That is absurdly low. Some economists said we would never reach this kind of level of employment again. And before you say, well, it's because of people out of the workforce, that's not true. That's not true. What's happened is it's because our economy has grown, all right? And when you grow an economy, you add kids who are not yet ready to work. It's not because people stopped working or stopped seeking work. No, not at all. So don't get that into your head that that's correct. It's incorrect. Now, back to my main point. Donald Trump did not even address in his speech true foreign policy. All foreign policy is not based on economic development or economic policy. What about Syria? What about Russia? What about ISIS? I mean, he mentioned radical Islamic terrorism. That's a very broad brush, okay? But in terms of the Middle East and the region, what about that? Nothing. Nothing. It's as if Donald Trump gave a speech and didn't challenge himself to talk about areas where, as president, he's going to have to establish policy and deal with those particular concerns. It's like he just said, well, I haven't really thought about it, so I'm not going to mention it, or I don't want to think about it because, I put this speech together in haste and I really haven't had time to really sit down with things and all that stuff. No, he put together a speech that was empty and has this idea that America's bad And he's going to fix it, but he's not really telling us how he's going to fix it other than saying America first. Now, there are different ways to achieve America first. Here's my issue with his way of achieving America first versus what my way of achieving America first would be. Donald Trump's way of achieving America first is to build a wall around our country and say, okay, I'm going to bring all of these companies in and we're going to build in America, but I'm not going to subsidize labor. Okay? So let's say that these companies come in, they get tax breaks to build structures, but their relief doesn't begin to address labor cost issues. So what happens is the products that are produced are jacked up. Okay? And if he's going to rely on tariffs to make overseas goods more expensive, you know what we're going to have at the end of the day? A rate of inflation that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And high rates of inflation lead to high costs, which lead to a slowing of economic growth, which lead to, that's right, recession. Okay? Recession. So Donald Trump's picture of America is bleak. His idea of America first on face is a good one, but his way to get there is going to drive us into recession. It just is. There's no two ways about it. There's no way to avoid that. It's a fact. It's an absolute fact. Now, he then says that he's trying to look out for people and that Washington has enriched themselves at the expense of the people. Well, it could be argued that with his business ties, he's going to enrich himself in Washington at the expense of Americans. And consider his first two acts as president. He repeals the mortgage reduction fee, okay, that President Obama put in place to make it easier to refinance your home, right? He takes that away. How is that helping a homeowner? It's not. Then he says, well, I'm going to leave Obamacare in place, but I'm going to make sure that states ease the burden. What burden? What are you talking about? Where is that coming from? It's a vaguely written executive order. What does he mean? It's like he's more interested in getting rid of Obamacare than actually having a plan to make Obamacare better. It's as if he is tasked with being in this position of having to think about health care for all Americans when he really doesn't want to. It's really weird, that he puts that out there. And it's even weirder that it's one of the first two actions he takes as president of the United States. Both actions are not favorable to people. They simply just aren't. So far, Donald Trump starts off on the wrong foot with a speech that, while it had this right idea of trying to make us feel better about our country, it was the right idea, but the execution was terrible. It made us feel, oh my God, oh, woe is us, we're bad. But in point of fact, we're not. We're not. If Donald Trump were an honest broker, he would have thanked President Obama for leaving him in a healthy economy and for digging the economy out of one of the worst positions it's ever been in its history. Stay tuned.